everybody. Welcome back to the Flatten Your Fear Summit. This is an exciting interview. We're going to make some magic here today. I want to welcome to the summit Tim David. He is a magician, an author, a speaker, a motivational guru, and really just an all-around nice guy. Tim, welcome to the summit.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Great to be here. Love this topic. Love it so much.
It is really so necessary, right? I mean, there's so much fear out there. We all struggle with it. I'm not immune. You're not immune. And I want to share with people your life and what you've been through, what you do, and how you've overcome fear. So let's get into it, but let's start with your background and how you got to where you are today, because the story itself is pretty cool.
Yeah. So, I had a hobby as a child, and that hobby was sleight of hand, magic, card tricks, coin tricks, that sort of thing. And, sort of faded away a little bit in my teenage years. I discovered music, I discovered girls.
Yeah.
And I also got a job. And when I got my first job making a minimum wage, I began to realize, I don't know how much I enjoy this part of adulting.
Right.
So, I rediscovered my hobby, and I started to make a little bit of money at it. I remember my very first check was a $10 check. And I had worked, 45 minutes to get that $10. And that was about twice as much as I had made per hour. So I'm now making 4 times as much for a job.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
So I decided let's make that happen. Let's make that happen for real, and let's make that happen for a career. To which my family was certainly not impressed or enthusiastic. I mean, when I was growing up, my mother was an accountant. My older brother had gone off to college, and he had become a sound engineer and worked at Bose Speaker Corporation. So very sort of traditional career paths. My father designed nuclear submarines for the Navy, had multiple degrees, and was sort of again, into the education, get your degree or degrees, and get into the workplace.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, we butted heads for a long time. He did not want me to throw away my chance at a realistic future. And I think anybody who shares their dream or their goals, and very often this is where fear shows up, right? Fear shows up when we have something that we want to do that's different.
Yes.
And it might be different from what other people expect. It might be different from our own experiences or our own past, but it was definitely a hard left for me.
Sure.
And sometimes when you share those goals, the people who are supposed to be supportive and supposed to be encouraging very often aren't. And it's out of love. And again, I know my father, cared about me. And one of the experiences that I share that really stuck out to me and really lives in my memory, brought me over to the dining room table, and he spread out all the bills on the dining room table. So my father had, physics degrees and engineering degrees. He was very, like I said, left brain logical. And he showed me all the bills, and he grabbed his calculator, and he proceeded to try to logic my dream out of me.
Right, exactly.
And he said, you don't understand, Tim, it's going to cost you $800 per month just to live at my house.
Right.
Oops. So new policy instituted at my household, $800 a month in rent. You can follow your dream, but here's a dose of tough love. Here's a dose of reality. A good sort of practice run, a good practice try where there's a safety net, but you better pay your rent.
Right.
So, I failed. I struggled for a long time. And I found a mentor. I was really lucky. I got connected with a mentor who was able to show me the ropes, the ins and the outs of the business side of show business.
Sure.
A lot of times, again, when people have a dream, especially if it's artistic or creative or even entrepreneurial, sometimes that business side of things.
So true. They forget.
Gets left behind, right? If I'm just good enough, good enough, then the world will beat a path to my door, which is absolutely not how it works. So if I'm practicing my card tricks in my room, how will I ever really share that magic or get that entertainment out into the world? Or now as a speaker, how would I get my message out into the world if I'm just practicing on it, writing my speeches, working on the stuff? You've got to understand the business of show business. Business is the bigger word, and it has to come first. So I found a mentor. He explained the ropes. He showed me the ins and the outs. He taught me a system. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to create. I didn't have to invent. I just had to implement, and I had to trust. And I did that, and I went from doing 1 or 2 shows a month, maybe if I was lucky, at about $100 each, to the very next month after implementing that system, I did 17 shows. The month after that, I did 28, which is almost double. And then every month for the next 8 years, I did between 25 and 30 on average, with as many as 48 shows in a single month.
Amazing.
And, I don't know if you know anything about magicians or magic shows, or actually, let me put it to you this way. I don't know if you know anything about little kids' birthday parties.
A little
right?
bit. I do. Yeah.
All right. You have 4 kids.
Yeah.
But 48 of those in a month.
Oh my gosh, Tim, seriously. Come
amazing
on.
birth control. Let me tell you that. It was it was crazy, but it was what I loved. It was what I loved. It was my passion. And I thought it was my forever dream until I had kids of my own. But my dad recognized the success. It took a while. Like I said, there was an 8-year period where I was doing between 300 and 350 shows a year, touring all around and having a blast.
Oh my gosh.
And
paying your rent, by the way, right?
Paying dad my rent. Yes, absolutely. And, and I bought a fancy car and I did all the cool things that a teenager would do.
Right.
And I got my own place. And when my dad came to look at my place, he nodded, and then he reached into his pocket and he pulled out an envelope. And inside that envelope was all the rent money that I had ever paid to him in cash.
Gosh,
he set it aside, knew he was going to do that the entire time. And it was a lesson that, hey, it put the love back in the tough love piece, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't want anybody to think my dad was this really hard, hard-nosed, tough guy.
Story.
What a great
story.
idea. I'm probably going to steal that. I think I'm going to use that.
Yeah, but you can't now because your kids are going to hear this. They'll know that you're saving the money.
I won't give them the money back. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not the idea that I was talking about.
I got it. Okay.
So that's the success I think that people see. And, that's the story that I tell, often when people ask, how'd you get your start? There's my mother was an accountant and this and that. But I don't get to talk about this side of things, the fear side of things, the uncertainty, the false starts, the doubt. And, it really was not as overnight as it didn't feel as overnight as the story sounds when you sum it up in, 2 minutes.
Right.
So that's why I'm so excited to talk to you more about this and really, how to approach this, how to deal with it, some practical tactical ideas that I want to share with your audience.
Yes,
and maybe even bust some myths about how fear shows up in our lives and what it's there for, and some of our misconceptions about how this stuff works. Let's
do that, because I know. Okay, so you're an entertainer. Even though you're not doing it today, you've pivoted into a really pretty substantial calling, but you're still on stage. You're still in front of people. You're still persuading people. With your knowledge and your skills. So you're still an entertainer in that regard. You're still presenting yourself. But talk about the stage fright. Talk about the anxiety. Talk about the self-doubt, because I think one of the things that happens is we assume when we hear that success and we hear that drive, and you just knew what you wanted to be, and people think, well, okay, so it was easy for him. I mean, he may have struggled to get to a point where he had 300 jobs a year. But talk about the struggle that was going on in here that nobody knew about. And that's where we all start to be like each other, right? That's where we all share the human experience. Talk to us about what happened with that.
Yeah, and I think I may even have it to a different degree slightly. When I was 16 years old, I had my first panic attack, and I was subsequently diagnosed with a litany of anxiety disorders: general anxiety, seasonal affective, panic disorder, a few other, depression, those types of things. And so when anxiety shows up in my life, it shows up in a big way. A lot of times it is stress related, and I feel the pressures and the stress and the anxiety of having to step on stage. But there's also like a button in my brain that kind of misfires and says, now it's time to panic. We don't know why, but panic, and we'll figure something out to panic about. Wow. But the physiological response is fairly random. But if you were to measure it in the body, it would be exactly the same as if a quote unquote normal person had a gun to their head. That moment of absolute physiological panic. Yeah. So when I was about to step on stage, I would have in the back of my mind, is that going to happen?
Oh my gosh.
Is that going to happen while I'm on stage in front of these 400 people, or in front of these 25 people, or in front of whatever? And what then, because it will show up as not just an emotion, it shows up as a physical feeling. Anybody who's experienced stress and of any kind knows that it manifests in the body. It shows up, as butterflies, or as pressure in your chest, or as sweaty palms even, and dry mouth. it shows up in a myriad of different ways. And when it, again, is at that level, it shows up in, things like tunnel vision and dizziness and tingling and numbness and all kinds of crazy.
Hard to hide that when you're on stage, everyone's looking at you.
You know what I've learned though, Elizabeth, is that, how many times have you had the experience of talking to someone and congratulating them after they've done a speech? Maybe it was a best man speech or a toast of some kind, or, something for work or whatever.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, that was great. And they say, I was so nervous.
Yeah.
Shaking. You didn't see me shaking. You didn't see the sweat pour. And you're like, no, I didn't even see that. Yeah. So there is this illusion of transparency, scientists call it, that we feel like everybody knows what's going on inside. Another thing I learned— Which
makes it worse too, which makes it worse if you assume that, right? And then you get more nervous.
And absolutely. Everybody can see, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a downward spiral. But there's also one thing I learned as a magician is the audience, and this is true, whatever your audience is, if it's a one-to-one interaction, your audience did not know how the show was supposed to go.
Good point.
Your audience will never know how the show was supposed to go unless you go like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. Oh, the card was supposed to float, not disappear. Well, no, if the card doesn't float, then make it disappear, make it change into the selected card or what, and go with that. Right. And the audience will be none the wiser.
Can we stay camp on that for a second? Because that's a life lesson. Which is when things don't go the way they were supposed to go with the way they're going. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's a lesson. Maybe it's something that bigger that it's leading to. I don't want to overdo that, but that seems like a really amazing life lesson because we are focused on this is the way things are supposed to go. And that has to be at its height when you're on stage, right? Because you've practiced and you said, okay, this is the way I'm going to do it. So when it doesn't go that way, you have to pivot. You have to adjust.
And there's something to be said about being just present in that moment, and as in my musician training too, the improvisational side of things. Yes. You have to be present. You have to listen to your fellow musicians, or in an everyday case, your fellow, conversationalists, the people you're talking with, whoever that may be. You listen to that and you sort of go with that. You listen to what the world is telling you, what your experience is telling you. And you try to be flexible, you try to improvise, you try to go with it. Right. And when you have that ability, because here's the one thing that I would sort of clarify, because I think the term flatten your fear might have a connotation of reducing fear, which is for me, I don't know if it's just me, it might be everybody, I don't know, but I think that's impossible.
Yeah, I agree with you. And they actually say that the best coaches in the world will say it's not about reducing it.
Right. So, but however, if you increase confidence, if you increase willingness, then what happens, as that graph goes up, that fear does sort of appear to flatten. Right. But you know what? It's funny because neuroscientists have discovered sort of how the brain works, how the brain makes decisions. And usually fear shows up in a decision. Should I pursue this business? Should I make this life change? Should I end this relationship? Whatever this decision is, there's fear associated with what could happen next. So in the decision-making process, neuroscientists have discovered that the brain does not have a central decision maker. The brain is like a democracy. The brain has all these different parts, all these different pieces, taking in all kinds of different information, processing it in its own unique way. And then a decision sort of bubbles up to the surface, almost like a vote is taking place. Yeah. And fear is one of those voices. Yes. And if you were in a part of a work team and a decision needs to be made where there's many voices, you're going to have that person, right? Yes, that always. Negative person. Always. Who is, you launch an idea and they're like,
every time.
Oh, you got another one? All right, let me reload because I know I'm going to shoot that one down too, right? Every time. That negative person has the same need that we all have, which is to feel heard. Yes. Feel validated. Right. That no, I'm not a pessimist, right? I'm a realist. In other words, hear me. This matters. This is important. This is real. your fear is doing the same thing. Hear me. Yeah. So if you try to squash it, if you try to ignore it, if you try to push it down, it's only going to get stronger and try to be heard and be even more agitated that you're not listening to it.
Right.
Whereas if you say to that person, I hear you, I acknowledge you, we're going to move forward as a team anyway because of this, this, and this, you can do the same thing with your fear. You can say, yes, I know. Like for me, if I'm having a panic attack, I literally have to tell my fear, you're right, I could die right now. That's not logical. Nobody's ever died from a panic attack. Right. But fear is not logical. If you try to reason with fear, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your energy. So I have to acknowledge it and say, I might die.
Yeah.
I might die right now.
Right.
That's going to have to be okay. Because I need to do this in order to feel alive. Yeah. I need to do this in order to actually move forward and live. So what we do with decision is we accept this is a potential risk. And many people are risk averse. And that's why they feel increasing amounts of fear in a lot of situations. People very conservative, very risk averse, feel a lot of fear. Well, you know what? Sometimes the riskiest thing to do is not take the chance.
Right.
Sometimes that riskiest thing, that thing that we cannot tolerate, the thing that we cannot accept or are unwilling to do is not try.
That's so true.
So sometimes using that democracy decision-making process, which is our brain's natural decision-making process, and acknowledging each component and saying, yes, you're right. Not you're wrong. Not it doesn't matter. But yes, it is right that this is a potential chance.
Yeah.
But the alternative is something I'm not willing to live with.
I'm not willing to. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's almost like a tool where you say, okay, worst case scenario, like I'm going to let the fear voice make its point, to a degree, and take that worst case scenario, not focus on it, but acknowledge it. Yeah, that might happen. Am I willing to live with that? Whatever that looks like. And
anytime in the middle of a panic attack where I was unwilling and said, no, I've got to get to a hospital right now. No, this chest pain is not just stress. It's a heart attack or whatever crazy thing. Because once that brain flips the switch, then the rest of the brain looks for a reason and then, tries to fill in those gaps, which is your brain's job. Your brain is programmed, designed to find gaps and discover what goes there, what is the cause of that effect.
Amazing.
And anytime, you think of any time like a tragedy happens, we always say, why did this happen? Ever since you were 2 years old and you've had 2-year-olds, at that age, all they say is why.
Right.
That's that part of the brain kicking on, coming online, and that need for causality never goes away.
Yeah.
So we have that feeling, that emotion. We try to find a reason for it. Sometimes that reason is, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this. I'm not that enough.
Yeah.
And then imposter syndrome sort of sets in.
Oh my gosh. Imposter syndrome. I mean, everybody mentions that. I think this is like the human experience, imposter syndrome. I have to ask you, talking about why, did you ever figure out why you started getting panic attacks at 16? Have you ever sort of found that missing bit of information? Is it something genetic? Is it something in your experience? I mean, I'm curious as to why you think suddenly that came on and it became part of what you had to deal with.
Well, I'm not necessarily an expert in the causality. There is family history on my mom's side. Almost everybody on my mom's side has experienced anxiety, depression, panic disorder, that sort of thing. There is some evidence to suggest. I have a neuroscientist friend who's looking into this, so I don't know how well established this is, but he swears by it. He says, "Oh yes, everybody's saying this is the thing." Cannabis is a trigger. Almost can sort of start that, and once that trigger has been flipped or that switch has been flipped, he says, "Yeah, it's for life." And that was the time. That was like the first time I had tried it. Was that day that I had this anxiety attack. And so I don't know, again, could be anecdotal, could be, whatever, but he says, and of course that was it for me. Like never again.
Never again.
Right.
Absolutely. Do you come up, so allowing, I hear one tool coming out, which is kind of allowing yourself to go to the worst case scenario, not trying to shut up the voice of fear as much as sort of manage it and deal with it and acknowledge it, right? Just like that person. I think that's a great, think about that person in the boardroom who wants the attention and says, no, I'm just trying to give you the balance. What other tools have you come up with? Because you continue to be on stages, you continue to be in front of people, you continue to lead, to motivate, to change organizations. You've got a message that's just amazing, but you haven't totally shaken the fear thing, have you? I mean, you're with the rest of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because, like I said, as the necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes.
So, I have built some skill sets and some tools to cope and to manage and to continue, moving forward, because simply what choice do you have?
Right.
So some of those tools are extremely simple, the power posing from Amy Cuddy, which is something that I have been teaching for years and years and years. The idea that there is a feedback loop between the body and the brain, and the body, we used to think the brain was just the command center of the body. The brain controlled the body. The brain would have an idea, make a decision, send a signal down, and then the arm would move.
Right.
But it also happens in reverse. The body is also sending signals and information, chemical signals and otherwise, back to the brain.
Correct.
That influences and affects the state of the brain and what it does next. Yeah. So if you stand in a confident way, then you, within moments, begin to feel more confident. And that's, again, something that's been established pretty extensively.
Yeah.
So that's one technique. Deep breathing techniques are also fairly common. I'm sure a lot of your guests are talking about breathing techniques or mindfulness. But I think for me, the big myth to bust is that idea that, optimism is not the answer, not to be blindly optimistic and to simply say, no, that won't happen. That could never happen, but rather to be, but also the answer is not pessimism.
Yes,
the answer is certainly not pessimism either, because that will freeze you.
Right.
The answer, according to, and I'm not going to get her name right, but it's Gabrielle Oettinger, it's this Dutch name, but she's a research scientist who did a really cool study on weight loss. And she had groups of people do a weight loss program. And she asked these groups of people and assigned these groups of people into 3 categories. The first category were the people who believed that this was going to be easy and I can totally do this. The optimists absolutely can do this. The second group of people said, I don't know, I failed too many times. This is probably not going to work. The pessimists.
Right.
The third group of people, the one that lost the most weight by far, something like 26 times more weight, 26 times more weight than anybody, was the realistic optimists. This is going to be hard.
Yes.
And I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah. I love it.
That's feel the fear and do it anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
Yeah.
So, and that is the experience. That is what happens. It is not a lack of fear. It is not a presence of full confidence. It is a debate between the two. It is a negotiation.
What a great way to say it. And, not only that, you're validating people, because I think there's shame involved with don't fear, you're in fear, you're in fear. And there's this like, I'm in fear, it's so shameful and I got to get out of fear. I think validating the fact that it's always going to be there. We want to reduce it in our life, but we have to recognize that it being there doesn't make you less than. Let's talk about when you pivoted from magician to what you do now, and what was the fear like there? Because now you're changing course again, right? So talk to us about that experience.
This is so relevant to me right now. We're in this, COVID-19 crisis. Yeah. We're in the middle of it. A lot of people think, well, things are opening up. We're towards the end of it. You and I are in states where we feel like we're in the middle of this thing, and
we're in jail right now.
We got to be careful. So a lot of events, which is where I speak.
That's right.
Canceled overnight. Gone. Months of income, months of expected income, I should say. Looking ahead at my calendar, now seeing blanks.
Wow.
Is also, again, a similar experience to pivoting from magic to speaking, because there is unknown and uncertainty.
That's right. Now,
what's different this time than in the past, I'll say 2 times that I've had 2 major pivots. One, dropping out of college to become a magician. That big first pivot, right? Big moment. A lot of fear and uncertainty, a lot of doubt, a lot of failure and not knowing what I was doing. Second pivot, which is what you asked me about, doing 300 shows a year and then having a baby in 2007. My oldest daughter was born. and realizing, I can't really be on the road and be a father the way that I want to be. I know some people can manage it, but for me, that choice was clear. And it became clear as she got, continued to get older and require more of us as parents.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but for about 2 years, I just sort of thought about it. I just sort of like, well, what could I do? How could I work less and earn more? And, I saw people on stage who were doing basically what I was doing. They didn't have any props. They didn't have any tricks, but they were still engaging an audience, and they were speaking, and they earned a lot more money than I did as a magician at that particular, corporate event. So I thought maybe I could do that. Maybe I could do that, but who am I? I don't have any information that is worth. I don't have a message. I don't have a life story. I'm not missing a limb. How could I be a motivational speaker? I have not climbed Everest blindfolded. I haven't done that. And not only that, I don't have a degree, and I've never had a real job. How can I speak to corporate America about what it's like there? What could I possibly bring to the table?
How am I special? Right.
Yes. And once again, same deal, imposter syndrome.
That's right.
So, but you know what? It's funny is that a lot of the lessons that I learned as a magician, engaging people, connecting with people, using humor, being flexible, a lot of these translated. And I found one that really just resonated with a lot of people. And that's the idea of human connection.
Yeah.
A lot of people hate magicians immediately. I would see a guy in the back, like a 6-year-old in timeout with my show, like, oh, here we go, magic boy. All right, come on, bring it. What do you got?
Right.
So
I know what you're doing. I know they see through your tricks, right?
And that's it. They think I'm there to trick them and make them look stupid.
Oh, wow.
So I had to create a connection with an antagonistic audience. In every audience, there was that person or group of people. Sometimes it was the whole audience.
Wow.
And so human connection, when it is difficult or seemingly impossible from the start, think about sales, think about a dentist.
That's right.
When people go in and they have a natural expectation of who this person is or what they're going to do or how the experience is going to go. So that has become a thread through my my messaging and the information that is valuable that I can share with people. And since then, I have spoken to a lot of different corporations. I've heard their stories. I've seen what they've applied, and I've taken things from organization A and brought it to organization B. That's great. Said, and I've become that expert over the years of reading books, writing books, talking to people, having, experiences, applying what I did and twisting it so that it worked over here, and then twisting it again so that it worked over here.
That's great.
That's where expertise, comes from. So all this to say, another practical, tactical takeaway for approaching fear is simply, and I don't know how to manufacture this. I don't know how, other than for me to say, this is how it is, believe it. But I think people are going to have their own experiences. And that is this. I think it's simply a matter of faith that you will be able to. You might not be able to now. You might not have the answer now. You might not know what the answer is. But if you take that one step, then the rest of the path will become clear. And if you falter or are not strong enough, then you will be able to earn the strength, gain the strength, develop the strength to move forward. And if you can't, then it's not for you. It's not meant for you.
Yeah, you'll find out. Right.
So that's where I think, and for me, having all those experiences of having done that and feeling completely out of my element, and then just, this is doable and doable by me, which is right. So that faith component, faith in the ability to improvise, faith in the ability to adapt. But I think it also comes back to willingness. Willingness to be able to put yourself in that situation.
To take that step. To take that step out. You said something, Tim, about that is so in common with so many people that are pivoting into something new. Why me? I'm not missing a limb. I don't have this horrible story to tell. Although as you're telling your story, you're helping people right now who have dealt with anxiety, panic attacks. But we tend to not see our stories that way, right? And we think, well, if we don't have this incredible story, no. But we do. We have gifts, we have talents, we have purpose. And you just took that step out and thought, well, let me just try to see if this resonates. And as a result, how many books have you written now? As a result, you've impacted a ton of people. Let's get into the books. I want people to see what you have, because I already own like 3 of them now. And I found out you wrote a teenage one and I can't find it. So you need to tell me where.
Yeah, I don't have one of those myself. I have some, like, this is the most obscure one that I have that I've written. It's the very first thing I ever printed up. I printed up exactly 1 copy. But this little guy sort of started me off in when I put out the ebook version. Yeah. For whatever reason, I think the term memory improvement tips was like a search term in Google, like a popular search term. Yeah. I went to bed that night. I woke up and it's 16,000 copies had been downloaded on the Kindle. And then it went up to like something like 30,000 copies in the first week, which was number 19 on Amazon overall in their products, like 19. I was like, what is happening? So I've never come near that, but that was a total fluke, total accident. But every single thing since then is sort of built up. But these are the books I actually usually tell people about.
Tell us.
So the first one is Magic Words. Just the idea of tiny changes in my script as a magician would create big differences in the audience's reaction and response. And I mean the in-between words that most people ignore. But because like those little, joining words, function words, they're called, are very powerful and have deep sort of psychological impacts and patterns that you can sort of use intentionally to poke the brain in just the right place to get the type of reaction or response that you want. So there's 7 magic words to motivate, engage, and influence there. The next book was, I'll skip this guy. This was published for 4 months. That was the idea of all these influence tactics and techniques that I taught in Magic Words, because it's not just a list of words for sure. I wanted to share all the stories that I've heard of people applying them. Nice. So people applying influence to, one guy had convinced his town, who had denied for over 50 years any improvements to the school system, right? Any improvements to the building. So he ended up getting something like 960 out of 980 people to vote yes for the first time in 50 years for a 92.4 million or billion. I can't even remember. It was
some kind of bond to improve.
Can't be billion, but it was.
It was huge.
$96.4 million dollar school that Words built. So I was able to. So I was able to sort of unpack. Well, what did he do differently this time? Right. That a group of people who were so stubborn and so against it for so long.
Great story.
Had an overnight turnaround. So that book was taken down and republished as The 4 Levels of Influencing People.
Flip.
Updated, expanded. Yeah. Kind of the deal.
I love that.
This book right here is for people when they come to me. This was an accident. I didn't mean to write this book.
Oh my gosh.
It was just so many people saying, I want to do what you do. I feel like, I don't feel like you. I feel like I do have a story. I feel like I do have a message. Some people were like, I feel like I want that money too. I want 5 figures an hour. Sounds great to me. Traveling around and being put up in hotels and fancy airplanes and all that stuff. They like that. So, a lot of magicians, how do I make that transition as well? A lot of other artists, a lot of entertainers, a lot of people just with any kind of story to tell. How do I do that? How do I write a book? How do I publish a book? How do I get my message out there? How do I become a speaker? So just all the emails, all the different things, I was able to kind of compile it.
That's awesome.
And then totally reworked it, and it became an actual book. It's not just a collection of emails, but this is sort of all the advice that I've given to people on how to become a professional motivational speaker. And then this book was forced on me by my audience.
That is downstairs in my kitchen right now.
It came in. This is the only one I have. I ordered a literal truckload. I have an 18-wheeler, semi truck.
Well, that'll take forever.
It is taking forever.
The onesies and twosies come right away.
And Amazon does get priority too. So if you ordered through Amazon. But anyway, this book here, it's called The 7-Day Digital Diet. And because I had focused so much of my career on human connection, people assumed that I am anti-device, anti-phones, anti-screens, which I am not.
Right.
However, I do recognize that there is a threat to human connection from our devices. Mm-hmm. So this is this 7-day process is striking the balance between the two. A lot of these books, a lot of these programs are eliminate the distractions, eliminate the devices, throw your phone in the river, go Amish, do the Amish thing. So it's not going to work. It's not going to be practical for most people.
Yeah.
So what works for me, what works for my children is this process of balance and healthy screen use. Because listen, TikTok is different than FaceTiming with grandma. Those are
That's
different.
Right. There's a difference.
Different screen time, different uses, and one is a little more healthy for the child's brain than the other. But I love tech. It allows us to do this. It allows you to have this summit and reach so many people. It's a very exciting thing as long as we use it properly and correctly.
Well, I told you I have 4 teenagers. Well, one's a tween. Mm-hmm. So the book came yesterday, and I have it prominently sitting out in the kitchen. And I think I got a few eye rolls. Yeah, discoverable. I'm like, okay, we meet at night. We're going to read a chapter a night. But I got a lot of eye rolls, like, oh, great, here comes more screen time management. But in flipping through it quickly, I just think what's so amazing is that you're the type of person that continues to find when you have insight into something and you think you have a solution, you share it with people. You notice that in your life, right? You find a solution.
Very, very true. It's when I was doing magic, other people were saying, how do you get so many gigs? And I would help them. And I actually had 6 books for magicians that are not even, and then the same thing with speaking. Yeah. So, now that you mention it, there's sort of a pattern there.
There is a pattern.
Do and then share.
And which means we cannot even begin to predict the next book from you, which is kind of exciting because whatever solution you're going to come up with, depending on what life brings your way, you will eventually share that. So I think you're an amazing person to follow that way. And I know everything is changing in the world. So we're going to see you do different things and, the format by which you share your knowledge and all of that and influence will change and has changed. But how can people get the books, get more from you, get into your information, social media, just give them all of that?
Sure. I think, the general place to reach me is goodatpeople.com. That's sort of the home base for my blog, for my books, those types of things. For people who right now, I'm not coaching magicians. If you want to be a magician, I'm sorry, I'm not your guy. If you want to be a speaker, if that is, your fear is public speaking, which they say is, the number one fear.
Right.
Then that's something that, you'd go to getspeakinggigs.com for, to help develop, if that's something you want to do, as a, trade or profession or as a business generator, if you want to stand on stages or on screens now and develop those types of programs. I think that's the best way to reach me.
You know what? One thing, let me suggest a solution you can come up with that I think you will in the next 6 months is helping people understand how to do virtual events with the same energy, feeling and outcome as you standing on a stage. So I'm going to just challenge you with that. And then let me know, once that time is passed, I think you're going to be able to help the world with that because you have been able, even through the screen, to bring your energy, bring your giftedness. But we're all going to have to pivot, right? Things are going to be different for a while. And, there's an advantage to that. It's reaching more people. So we'll see what the next few months bring. But I can't thank you enough. You've given me so much time. You're awesome. You're a consummate professional and a nice guy. And I appreciate all of this. You've helped people, really.
Well, that's humbling to hear. And I appreciate you for creating the platform and the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. We will do something in the future. I feel like a podcast is coming your way. So wait for that call from me, okay?
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Bye.